So the first book I read in January was Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is everywhere and anywhere, so if you've not heard of it before, I literally don't know where you've been or have been living under a rock. I got serious book FOMO, so I was like, I have to read it. I'm not normally a fancy girl myself. I mean, I've read Harry Potter because I'm a human being with feelings and a soul, but never really gone like hardcore into fantasy, if you know what I mean. But my friend Lindsay was like, you gotta read it, and she is like fantasy fan massive, so I trust her judgment completely. So I read it. It's about 498 pages long, so it's a bit of a chunky monkey, but totally worth it. And the story is basically what happened if Hunger Games, Game of Thrones and Harry Potter had a baby. So there's a college and there's young kids and there's lots of dragons, there's lots of the taglines graduate or die, there's lots of death, and it's just got everything you could possibly want from a fantasy book. So we start off and we meet Violet, and she has her whole life wanting to become a scribe. So in this college, there are 4 quadrants that you go into, and one of them is the scribes, and she really wants to be a scribe. But then 6 months before the book starts, she gets told by her mother, who also happens to be the general of the college, that she's now going to become go into the riders quadrant and become a dragon rider. But she has quite a weak body. She suffers with a syndrome. I can't remember what it's called, but Rebecca Yarros also suffers with the same syndrome, and it means you can break your bones really easily and you're just quite fragile. And so she's all like scrambling to try and like survive. And just about before she's about to enter the college, she sees this dark and stormy, handsome man, and I think, all right, let's get into it. I'm ready for this. And it turns out the guy wants to kill her and that their families are sworn enemies. So there's a bit of Romeo and Juliet star-crossed lovers vibes in there. So we have an amazing enemies to lovers story. I've never seen anything like it. Read. I mean, this book, it did things to me. It did serious things to me. And Violet and Xaden, they are just like the sexual tension and the hate and it is just, I can't even describe it. It is a work of art. And so basically you follow Violet in her first year. She's trying to avoid not having sex with sexy Xaden. She's making new friends. Lots of people want to kill her because she's weak. And we just basically find out whether she's going to survive and go into her second year and all that comes with it. There's lots of politics as well, great for fantasy lovers. Rebecca Yarros has said that she's always wanted this to be a gateway book into fantasy, and that's exactly what it did it for me. I mean, it's got a golden cover, it's a golden story, it's a golden book, there's a golden dragon in it. I mean, I honestly don't know what more you could ask for a fantasy book. So seriously, read it and let me know what you thought. So not sure if this will come as a huge shock, but I read Iron Flame as my second book of the month, which is the sequel to Fourth Wing, also written by Rebecca Yarros, because that's how sequels work. The same writer writes different books with the same characters and plotline in. Very good. This one is even chunkier than the first one. Oh yeah, got it right first time that time. It is like over 600 pages long, but it is worth it. There's been quite a lot of controversy about this one, and I'm not really sure why, because I thought it was excellent. I know I'm not a fantasy, pro, but like all the hate online, I'm like, just chill out. So we see Violet and Xaden continue. I don't want to give too many spoilers away because I don't know if you're watching this, if you've read this or not, or if you've read the first one, but there's more dragons, there's more battles, there's more politics. The politics stuff, a lot of it did go over my head a little bit. So I just want to do a huge shout out to the Fantasy Fangirls podcast. They have a podcast, a TikTok and a YouTube channel, and they recapture the books 4 chapters at a time. So each podcast episode covers 4 chapters, and they get into the nitty-gritty. They recap the story, they talk about some foreshadowing that's there, they talk about plot points, then they have an archive section where they really deep dive into the bits that I didn't really understand, like the backgrounds. There's lots of history of the politics of why they've been battling, and the dragons and how they bond with the riders and what all that means, and all every dragon and rider, once they bonded, have a special power, and then they talk about the different powers and what the powers can mean and why different powers are sort of more important or less important. So it's such a good podcast. I'm still loving it. I haven't even gotten to the Iron Flame episodes yet because I'm still on the Fourth Wing episodes because I just love it so much. So I really recommend, if you're into fantasy, I really would recommend both of these books. But if you're someone that's into fantasy and likes to read like Harry Potter 1 to 7 in one sitting, this isn't for you, because we've been told there's 5 books in the series and this is only the second one, and then this one came out recently and we haven't even given a date for the third. But I don't have any patience or self-restraint, so I just went straight in, read both of them in about a week and a half, and then reread the first one after I'd finished the second one. Then I fell into a deep dark hole on the internet, and now I'm on the Reddit page nearly every day. So just be warned, your life will change forever, and you'll never see your world the same. I mean, I think about Zaid and Rierson on a bi-daily basis. I mean, every time I look at any man, I'm just thinking, you're not like Zayden. Zayden's way better like this. So just a little warning there, your life will change forever. But it is so good. I thought it was a really great follow-on from the first. It really explores some characters in deeper detail, and you get to see more sides of people, and the shock twist at the end of Fourth Wing, they really get into that in Iron Flame, and I really recommend. Please read, please tell me what you thought. I need friends to talk about this book with, because none of my friends have read it. Please. So after falling down what, as I'm sure you can tell, was quite a deep fantasy hole, I was quite depressed because the real world wasn't like, the Fourth Wing and Iron Flame books. There was no Xaden, there was no dragons, there was no magic powers. I was in January, it was grey. I was depressed with a capital D. So I thought I'd have a little bit of a palate cleanser, come back into the real world. So I picked up I Love You, I Love You, I Love You by Dockrill, which comes out in June. I was lucky enough to be sent a proof copy. Unluckily for me, this wasn't really a palate cleanser in the way that this also ripped my heart to shreds. So we follow the story of Ella and Lo, who are 2 teenagers who meet sort of when they're about 12 or 13 and instantly are just very clearly deeply in love with each other. But as teenagers go, you can't tell someone how you feel when you're a teenager, because then if they don't like you back, that's embarrassing, and then you'll die of embarrassment. So they sort of skirt around each other, not getting together, watching each other have relationships with other people, kiss other people, be engaged to other people. I mean, it is madness. This will they, won't they? Ross and Rachel have nothing on this couple. And we follow it, and it's a really big love letter to South London, where I'm from. So if you're a South Londoner, I think you're going to love this book. It's also just a great portrayal of what it was like to be a teenage girl, and sort of the self-preservation, the self-loathing that you have for yourself, but then the deep love you have for other people. It is just an amazing story. Laura's been really open that it's loosely based on her life, and it's just a really beautiful story. I'd really recommend it. You see them go from about 13 to about in their mid-30s, and it's just such a lovely read. It's really not very big, as you can see. It's about 300 pages. 300 pages, so easily read in a week, in a couple of days. It will just really restore your faith and hope and joy in the world and in human connection, and I just really recommend. And even if you're not someone that reads romantasy or romantic books, this is so much more than a love story, and it's also about a love story to yourself, not just to someone else. And it's kind of that whole story that until you love yourself, how can you really love someone else? RuPaul, am I right? So really recommend. Let me know what you thought about this one as well. I know I've got a proof copy, but it comes out in June, and pre-sales really helps Laura's book sale, so please do pre-order, and leave me a comment, and I might send it to you, but I probably won't, because I'm literally obsessed with the story and I love it so much, and I won't. But really do try and pre-order this if you can, because it's a great read. So then after that one, I decided to go back down into the trenches, quite literally, and read In Memoriam by Winn. This is also quite popular at the moment. It won Waterstone's debut fiction prize last year. It's a lovely read. It's a really nice quality book. It's not that big as well. This is the hardback. It's about, I don't know, a couple of pages, 370 pages. So again, not much of a doorstop book. And in this one, we follow Henry Gaunt and Sydney Elwood as they are at boarding school in a very traditional British boarding school. If you're American or not from England and not familiar with the school system, think Dead Poets Society, but more tea drinking and more secret sleepovers. So these are more cricket, lots more cricket. So these boys are at school together, and on the surface they're just really, really firm friends, but soon we find out that they're basically both in love with each other, but again, can't tell the other one that they're in love with each other because it's too scary. Also, being gay back then was illegal because the world is and was a horrible place. So they couldn't, even if they told each other, could they even be together? Then it's 1914 England, so, you know, we all know where this is going. And Henry enlists to go to the war because his mother is German and is being sort of taunted and saying that she's a spy and all of this. So he goes to war to sort of prove that his family is, you know, on the Rose's side. And then Sydney is like, I have to follow him, I have to follow him, I have to follow him. So he follows him to war. And, you know, do they find love in the trenches? I don't know. You're going to have to read it and find out. I mean, I do know because I read it, but, you know, for the sake of this video, who knows what's going to happen. And it's just a really heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching, all the wrenches. It's a really great, actually, portrayal of World War I that I haven't really read in a book before. Alice really gets into the nitty-gritty of the trenches and the warfare and the day-to-day life of were they on the front line all the time or when they went off and were able to have a break and the orders from above and all of this stuff. And it's really powerful. I really, really recommended it. It was heartbreaking, but in kind of the best way, like when your salty tears like give you a good exfoliating scrub and then your face is like beautiful and radiant because you've cried so much. That kind of good. I also do this a lot where I like don't really take the title of the book into consideration, and it's called In Memoriam, so I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but she does it really beautifully. And there's also some really nice visuals in the book of newspapers and how, you know, back then how the deaths were reported, and it's just really beautifully done. And Alice also tells us in the acknowledgements that one of the characters is loosely based on Siegfried Sassoon, who is a very famous war poet, which just gives it another like element, another dimension, which is really lovely. So yeah, again, tell me what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I love hearing what other people think about the books that I love. So let me know. But really, give it a read. I promise you won't be disappointed. So after all that drama, I really did need a palate cleanser, and I turned to my firm favourite. I read it about once a year, which is Heartburn by Nora Ephron. This is, despite the title, an absolutely hilarious read about a woman who finds out while she's heavily pregnant with her second child that her husband is having an affair. So we meet Rachel, Mark and Thelma Rice, and Thelma Rice is the woman that Mark's always having an affair with, and we always use her full name, Thelma Rice, for reasons that are unbeknown to me but I find hilarious. This book is also very, very famously loosely based on Nora Ephron's real experience that her husband really did have an affair while she was pregnant with their second child, and has openly not been very pleased with the result of the book. But don't cheat on your wife, dude, if you don't want a book to be written about it, mate. So it's a really great story. It's actually only set over about a couple of weeks. So this starts with the aftermath of her finding out that he's having an affair with Thelma Rice. And not from Mark, she finds out from a book inscription that Thelma Rice put in the book as a gift to Rachel and Mark's son, but it was like to Mark, and it unravels from there. And it's set basically in Washington DC, where she lives with her husband, or soon to be ex-husband, and then she runs away to New York, and it's a love letter to New York in a lot of ways. It's a love letter to modern love, and it is just a really fun little read. It's literally like 170 pages. I read it in an afternoon, just needed to feel something other than deep sadness, grief and despair, and it is so funny, and it really well documents being in a couple and having couple friends and all the different dynamics, and how you can you become almost one person with your couple, and then the other couple becomes one person, and it's like you're sort of in a couple within other couples, and it's really clever. And if you've ever read Nora Ephron or watched When Harry Met Sally or Sleepless in Seattle, it's the same witty, hilarious, funny, dry conversations and dialogue, and she puts in a lot of recipes in there because Rachel, the Nora Ephron character, is a food critic, and there's some really great recipes in there. So you want to make those recipes and then you want to read this book and you just want to have a delightfully warm, enjoyable and great afternoon. There's also an introduction by Nora Ephron, who's sadly passed away now, but it's really interesting to hear like her reflections on this edition of the book. So it's been about 15-20 years since the book first came out, and she's sort of reflecting on how well it's done and the aftermath from writing it, and it's really interesting, and I just really recommend as a sort of afternoon treat. Let me know what you thought. And my last book of the month this month was an audiobook, Before and Laughter by Jimmy Carr, which is part self-help, part autobiographical, part just hilarious comedy book written by the British comic Jimmy Carr. He's lived quite a long life so far. He's in his late 40s, early 50s, I think, and he is reflecting on how he got into comedy, the route he took to get there, what comedy has taught him and can teach all of us about, you know, life and happiness, and how laughter is you know, scientifically proven to make us live longer because of stuff that goes on in our brain. He's recently become a father, so he talks about that and being father late in life. He also tells funny shows about the road and being a comic. There's a hilarious story where he rips the door off a Tesla car. So it's told. If you do the audiobook like I did, he's narrating it, so he just feels like Jimmy sat next to you telling you his life story, which is really great. It was a really great book to round off the month, because we're starting to get into February and I was feeling lighter and I was just laughing. So again, let me know what you thought. Nothing he's saying, I think, is like actually new, fresh and exciting, but it's just that classic thing, like to help you get by is the answer is right in front of you. And also the hard work doesn't start when you listen to the audiobook. The hard work starts by doing the work, which is actually why I started this YouTube channel, because Jimmy said, don't care what other people think, do what makes you happy. And making these book videos makes me happy, and I've wanted to do it for so long. And I've just been too embarrassed and like not sure what people are going to think of me, what my friends are going to think, like what happens if I only get one view, or you know. But Jimmy was like, you should just do it, do what makes you happy, and this makes me happy. So thank you, Jimmy. And if it wasn't for Jimmy and it wasn't for that book, we wouldn't be here. So thank you for all of you for tuning into my video. Please can you like, subscribe? I'm new here, I'd love to make some friends, so if you've got any advice for me or tips, or if you love reading too, then drop me a comment, get to know me, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.